Yosemite National Park. Covering about 1,200 square miles, it is a land of majesty and tranquility. Teeming with life, creatures big and small call the grandeur of Yosemite their glorious home. With over 4 million tourists each year, Yosemite would be nothing like it is today if it weren't for the conservational efforts of John Muir. A wild spirit at heart, Muir looked beyond his time to help preserve Yosemite for future generations. Journey into the past to discover who John Muir was, how he demonstrated extraordinary leadership, and how his legacy lives on in the world today. On April 21st, 1838, Muir was born in Dunbar, Scotland, and had a special kinship with nature even as a child. He later moved to Wisconsin and began his early adulthood trying to find what he wanted to do with his life. Although the Civil War was on the horizon, he had no interest in becoming a soldier, for the thought of killing another human being was unimaginable. His journeys to find who he was brought him to the ports of San Francisco. There, he asked a man for directions. "Where do you want to go?" asked the man. Muir replied, "Any place that is wild." He was pointed in the direction of the Sierra Nevada, and when he first viewed the mountains, he was wonderstruck. Then it seemed to me that the Sierra should be called not the Nevada or Snowy Range, but the Range of Light. He was filled with utter awe when he first viewed Yosemite and the Sierra Nevada. No temple made with hands can compare with Yosemite. Every rock in its walls seems to glow with life. And so Muir was off, journeying through the Yosemite Valley. He explored the terrain and observed everything around him. He sketched the plants, animals, trees, mountains, and the whole Yosemite Valley itself. He collected countless specimens for further study as well, and recorded all of his adventures in his journals. Although Muir was often lonely, he was beyond those of his time and had an intellectual interest higher than other people of the valley. He felt like a millionaire just to experience the splendor of the mountains. He never carried a gun and was never harmed. He had attended the University of Wilderness, he called it, and had learned not from books, but from direct experience. He had returned to a home he had never known physically, but spiritually in his heart.
He felt that beautiful places and natural places was good for a person's soul. That it was important for everybody to go out and to, as he would say, saunter, because he hated the word hiking, because he thought hiking was a fast pace. Sauntering is you actually observe everything around you as you're walking. And he thought it was important for people to be out there to refresh their being and to help their soul.
However, during Muir's time in Yosemite, herds of sheep began devouring the lush valley meadows, and logging had become increasingly popular. Muir began to express concern for Yosemite's livelihood.
People don't realize, but John Muir came to Yosemite after Yosemite Valley was already preserved as the Yosemite Grant. That was in 1864. John Muir didn't even arrive here until 1868. But it was only just the valley that was preserved at that time, and the giant sequoia trees. The rest of the park was still, wild, unpreserved land. So John Muir in the 1860s, 70s, and 80s helped to preserve the entire area surrounding Yosemite, mostly the watershed that surrounds Yosemite Valley, because it's hard to preserve one little valley if the entire watershed that flows into that valley isn't protected as well.
And so Muir began to write, and write he did. His first article was published in 1871 in the New York Tribune. People all over the country loved his writings, as he wrote for magazines such as Overland Monthly and American Journal of Science.
So John Muir was not only somebody that had a vision, but he was somebody who was able to communicate broadly so that he could inspire other people to get involved. And he would do that through talks, he would do that through taking people into the mountains. Everybody loved to go hiking with John Muir because he was the person who could bring the woods alive to them and the mountains alive to them. And then he wrote magazine articles that were published all around the country that inspired people on the East Coast and the Midwest. And he also wrote a whole series of books. And those books were widely read. So with all those different ways of communication at the time, because this is before they had television and movies, there were great ways to get the word across. So when he first learned about the desecration of Yosemite, for example, he would write articles in magazines that were published back in New York, but then those were subscribed by people all over the country, so pretty soon everybody was learning about the desecration taking place in Yosemite and wanting to do something about it.
Muir encouraged his readers to go saunter in the wilderness and contribute to Yosemite's preservation. He wrote, "Climb the mountains and get their good tidings. Nature's peace will flow into you as sunshine flows into trees." In 1880, Muir reached the akeem of his life and married Louise Strenzel, starting a family. They later moved to their home in Martinez, California. Although Muir went on other travels, he continued his writings in his upstairs study. He called it the Scribble Den. When he turned 50, Muir completely dedicated himself to writing about conservation.
So in 1890, around a campfire with who was the gentleman Robert Underwood Johnson, the editor of Century magazine, quite an influential magazine in those days, Johnson said to me, "You write me 2 articles about 1, the grandeur of Yosemite, and 2, how we can preserve it, and I'll publish them, and we'll see if we can get Yosemite as another national park following Yellowstone's lead."
Johnson kept his word and published Muir's writings. They took off and soon motivated the United States Congress, sparking a bill regarding Yosemite's preservation. In 1890, it was officially passed by President Benjamin Harrison. John Muir's dream had come true. Yosemite was saved as a national park. Johnson later wrote, "Sound the loud timbrel, hooray for you! Yosemite is saved and the Lord must be happier." The name Yosemite comes from the Wananichi word Utsemite, meaning fierce fighter like a grizzly bear. John Muir did not fight with swords, but with his words. Although Muir passed away in 1914, his legacy did not die with him, for over 400 national parks have been established since his first efforts. The Sierra Club he founded in 1892 also continues his work to present day. This concept of setting land aside for preservation became known as America's best idea and inspired other countries to do the same. This demonstrates that Muir's ideas not only motivated his own country, but also went worldwide. Muir lives on in the beauty of national parks and through his countless writings. John Muir was truly an inspiration for Yosemite's conservation.